Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'll call the meeting to order of the Kosciuszko County Parks and Recreation Board, our second meeting. Just for the record, today is Thursday, September 15th, 2022. Looking at our agenda today, the first thing is the Pledge of Allegiance and the prayer. I don't know, do we have a flag in here to actually do a pledge? We do, right behind us. If you'll follow along with me, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I did not ask someone in particular to do a pledge. Would anyone like to lead us, or in a prayer? Would anybody like to lead us? Maybe our representative from Grace?
Oh, wow. Great. Since I'm so much more spiritual than myself. Just kidding. God, thank you for this opportunity to get together as friends and community. Ask that you watch over us and give us guidance as we make our way through this meeting. In your name, amen.
Amen. So we're looking at approval of the minutes from our last meeting on 8/18. Thank you, Michelle, for the packet you provided today. That is fantastic. Anybody have anything about the minutes?
I'd be happy to move their approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. We'll show the minutes from 8/18/22 is passed. Our next item of agenda is, so vitally important to this organization. If you followed along with us last time, you'll know that a master plan is really our first and primary order of business initially. And Donnie from ACOG is here, and he's going to make a presentation to us about MACOG and their ability to do our master plan. Donnie, would you come on up and introduce yourself? And I know you have a PowerPoint.
Well, thank you for having me here. My name is Donnie Ritzma. I'm the Senior Community Development Planner with the Michigan Area Council of Governments, or MACOG, as you know. Also with me is our Director, James Turnwald. We want to give a short presentation on kind of an overview of the purpose and the reason for establishing or developing this parks master plan to help guide the vision and the mission for you all as a newly established Parks Board. So to kind of start the presentation off, I will turn it over to James, who will kind of give an overview of MACOG, just for everyone who may not be familiar. And then I'll get more specifics on the actual guidelines that DNR recommends for putting together the master plan.
Perfect.
James?
All right. Good morning, or I guess now good afternoon. My name is James Turnwald. I'm the Executive Director with MACOG. Been with the organization since 2008 and been the Executive Director there since 2014. For those not familiar with MACOG, we're a governmental agency. We represent communities in Elkhart, St. Joe, Marshall, and Kosciuszko counties. We were created in 1970, and the reason we were created then and the reason we exist today is that we serve our local governments and we provide them with technical assistance. Typically, that's around regional issues, but we also provide technical assistance around localized issues as well. Our governing board, the folks who provide us with direction, are all elected officials. So from Kosciuszko County, we have Mayor Talmer, Commissioner Groninger, and then Councilwoman Groninger. And so you're well represented as Kosciuszko County with those elected officials. But those are the folks who help make sure that we are continuing to provide services for our local governments. And so Donnie will walk through the services that we can provide to the Parks Board and really be able to help you as you envision where you want to take the Parks Board. So I'll turn it over to Donnie. He would be your project lead on this, so you would be in very good hands. So I'll turn it over to him to kind of really walk through the specifics of our previous works.
Okay, thank you again. So we have, as James mentioned, we provide community and economic development program. So we provide technical planning services to help our communities in Elkhart, Marshall, St. Joe, and Kosciuszko counties to plan for their futures. So one of those outcomes is here on the screen. We have a number of communities we have helped put together a comprehensive plan. This is something similar if you're familiar with Forward Kosciuszko. They had just went through an updated comprehensive planning process over the last year and a half or so. So a lot of our smaller rural communities, don't have that technical planning on staff, and yet they express a need of being able. The communities are growing as far as development goes, but they never had a unified community vision, and that's one of the purposes for having a comprehensive plan. So we have a lot of experience working with communities to establish a vision and a mission to guide the community forward, looking at 10, 20 years from now to guide future improvements. Other experiencing work that we have done in community and economic development is like on the more technical deep dive stuff on the data is looking at parking studies. So I'm not getting into the specifics of that, but parking is parking. So we examine, the demands and the supply in our downtowns, mostly where a lot of activities occurred. However, in one of the lakes, we did do a residential parking study looking at some of the challenges they were expressing or experiencing with a number of residential units being converted to multifamily, but then also have limitations of parking. So we come up with a number of creative solutions to address parking in addition to long-term vision. And then now more relevant is our experience in doing parks master plans. So we've helped a couple of rural, smaller communities such as Bristol, Bremen, and here recently Wakarusa. Some of these have already had updated 5-year master plans, others did not. So we have experiencing with creating new plans as well as updating existing plans to refine the vision, as well as something that's much more applicable for Kosciuszko County is you'll see here Marshall counties. If you're not familiar with Marshall County setup, they did not have a parks board. And in 2020, the commissioners established a newly parks board, such as, in this situation here with Kosciuszko County. So we do have experience working with the county to create a new park master plan to guide a vision and direction for the newly established parks board. So it's very applicable for in Kosciuszko counties with the new park board. And I kind of alluded to Forward Kosciuszko. So this was an initiative that was done in the last year and a half, and in particular why it's relevant. We may not have been the lead agency, developing this particular plan, but we did serve as on the forefront as the administrative agency who had helped these communities in the Kosciuszko County come together to put together an RFQ, or an RFP, sorry, to procure consulting services who actually did the development of the plan, master plan itself. But during this planning process, there was a number of initiatives that came out with a need for parks and outdoor recreation. What do we do with trails? And so there's a lot of interest and momentum, and we want to continue with that from this planning initiative by doing this parks master plan with you all. So I mentioned getting into the guidelines through the Indiana Department of Natural Resources. These are the 7 chapters that they recommend that a plan be outlined in. So it's an introduction, existing conditions, existing facilities, looking at ADA compliance and accessibility, as well as a chapter on public participation, and then needs analysis, and lastly ending with an action program. But you're like, but we don't have any parks potentially underneath the county's ownership. So not a problem, because it was the same in Marshall counties to some degree. They did have 2 parklands, deeded to them, but they didn't know what to do with it. So they needed our assistance to help establish a vision and mission for the Parks Board. And one thing that was unique through them that we will carry over for Kosciuszko is during the needs analysis, there's a particular one called a gap analysis. So we will look at, where are there existing parks in the number of communities, and then where are there not, so we can build access and connectivity, be it through parks or trails, et cetera. There's also a benchmarking study where we will examine peer communities that are of relative size. How did they, were they a newly established parks board? It kind of measures against similar situations in communities. What did their strategies look like that we could, reuse? And then also, that's important for any planning process, whether it's a parks or comprehensive plan, is the public engagement. So during Forward Kosciuszko, that involved a very robust public participation process. while we don't want to necessarily duplicate the efforts that was done during that, we want to build off of that momentum and continue doing some form of public participation that's relevant for establishing a vision, aspirations from the community of what they want to see as their ideal county parks and outdoor recreational spaces. What does access and connections look like? What are maybe recreational programs that the county may not have now that they would like to see? As well as then engaging multiple stakeholders through this process. So one of those things that will look like is creating a steering committee. So there's a number of entities that we would like to engage with. I want to also be clear too, that this is the county's Parks Board plan. This is not a MACOG plan. Our role in GUIDE is to help facilitate the development of this plan, but really it's to get an actionable plan for you all to guide improvements, ideally in the next 5 years. So we're here as the facilitators to kind of help lead that process, but really we want to make sure the community and our efforts is reflective for you all as a Parks Board guiding a mission, a vision for you. And one way to do that is to build ownership, and to build ownership involves a number of public participation activities, doing a number of stakeholder interviews, asking them to serve on the steering committee, and being able to take an active role through this process of engaging with the local residents. If you can participate in the steering committee meetings, that helps build that ownership by you knowing as an individual, like, this is what we're doing, and this is how I can communicate with local residents to kind of have that local face. While again, we're facilitators, I think it's much more meaningful if if locals can put a face to a face that they can relate to. So this timeline, we understand the board will potentially like to consider a land water conservation fund. That's something I'll get here into in a second. But we're looking at a 6-month process. So we understand we're running short, but it's, again, not an issue. Through this process, we'll be doing a number of public participation engagement activities. But in this first month, we'll be establishing the steering committee, as well as then collecting and analyzing existing condition data. So that's looking at your census data, as well as then stakeholder interviews, getting that baseline conditions, getting the makeup and organizational structure of the Parks Board. Then we'll move into vision and needs from the community that can be done through a public input survey and a number of other engagement activities. And then working with the steering committee, getting to the specifics details of doing that gap and needs analysis, and then working with them again to prioritize goals and objectives. Then month 5, we'll be asking for public input once again to review the final plan, action program, and then in month 6, which puts us around March and April, seeking the board's approval with ultimate submission to the Indiana Department of Natural Resources. So as far as deadlines, milestones go, the first draft for the Parks Master Plan is November 15th. We have been advised, though, by IDNR that this was a newly changed, revised due date, so they understand that given that in the last couple of months this date was changed, that they are still accepting first draft plans by January 15th, but as an organization, we are going to do our due diligence to make sure that this first draft plan, as much as possible, is completed by the November 15th deadline. And you might say, well, what's included in that first draft? So what's included in that first draft will outline the organizational structure of the Parks Board, establishing a vision and a mission statement, the existing conditions, census data, as well as then a partial completion of public engagement, and then doing the ADA accessibility and review. The final plan is ultimately due on April 15th, and those components consist of doing the needs and gap analysis, the action strategy program, and doing the final public engagement component within seeking the board's approval. And I didn't mention earlier, but it's also restated here on the slide that this timeline really only applies to communities or entities who are seeking to apply for a land water conservation fund within that same grant year. So if the county wanted to pursue a land water conservation fund, that's where the November 15th, April 15th deadlines come into play, because you got to have a plan approved within that same year that you want to apply for a grant. However, if you are not wanting to apply for a grant, then the deadline is at any time that we get it completed, can be uploaded. So, I did mention, November 15th, here's what's due, as well as in the final submissions. And that's all that we had here, so I would open up for any questions, clarification that we may not address in the presentation.
Anybody have questions? Ma-
I've got one here. This may seem like a silly question to you, but I'm still in the learning process. But do we need funding to start this planning, or is this, what does it take to get the plan started?
Yeah, I can take this one from a procedural side. So we've presented, in advance of the meeting, a memorandum of understanding. Largely, that's to detail out what this scope is. The cost of that is $0. So for us to do this work, we would ask you to give us $0, and we will do that work with you. We are offering this plan at the reduced cost of free.
So I don't want you to write my business plan, is what you're telling me.
So MACOG has available funding to be able to offer this plan to you at $0. That's not necessarily something that we do in all cases with all of our technical assistance like this, but in this instance, we have funding available that really all that we're wanting is today, we're asking for the board's approval to move into that agreement so that we can begin working with you if that's the direction that you so choose.
Okay, I guess this is a follow-up to that one then. Do you have a template that you could provide us that we could, I'm sure there's got to be something, a format that we could use, just, A, B, C, and with some like fill in blanks type of situation?
A template
A template like for the, for the plan.
Yeah, I mean, so DNR has a template, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a template that is there. We're gonna actually help you write it, put together the pictures
Okay.
for it. We're gonna act as your staff, at your behest and at your direction.
Well, that makes sense.
So instead of you as volunteers working into the night writing chapter 6 on benchmarking or whatever, I might have my chapters wrong.
Yep.
We'll write that on your behalf.
Okay.
And then your job will be to review that and ensure that we have captured the local spirit of that chapter and presented that accurately. So the template, I mean, we can get you what we've done for other communities. You can kind of see in those previous slides what those chapters.
The reason I
are.
asked that question, I thought we were going to be drafting this, and I was cringing a little bit.
That's what we're here to help you
So,
with.
that's
Sorry,
kind
I
of.
was not,
yes,
clear on that
thanks.
part,
That
yeah.
helps.
Donnie will be writing it for you. I will not.
Thank you.
So just note, we had telephone books up here, and Michelle was kind enough to print the Winona Lake Master Plan for all of us and the Marshall County Master Plan for all of us. And then, that's for later. Okay.
Hey, I've got a couple questions. Just, so Aggie and I were, as the DNR subcommittee, have been talking to them, and in those discussions, it appears like there should be 2 other parallel activities. So I'd like to understand how that would happen with this development, the development of this plan. One is the recommendation that we think about our 30-year plus plan, right? Which is probably the basis of where do we want to go in the long term, and then what is the 5-year plan in terms of actionability. So I'd like to understand how you would approach that, just to make sure we're thinking larger scale. And then the second one that seems tied into the direction that we've gotten is how, and I think Marshall County did a 5-year trails plan. And with the direction we've gotten about connecting our communities, a lot of that's going to be trails related. How will that work happen, or can it happen in parallel with the master plan for the parks?
Yep. Great question. So the first one on the parallel of the longer-term vision, during this process, we will work with you in the steering committee to put together, during that gaps and needs analysis, we'll get an idea from the community of what our major challenges look like. And then we'll then do some activities to help you guys prioritize, what then are our major needs. And this is where the action program comes in. And so what this action program will do is the prioritization will help establish short-term wins as well as midterm wins. to be accomplished and implementable within the first 5 years. That will serve as the main priority action program, as well as then looking long-term, we do work within, some of those strategies just realistically cannot be accomplished in that 5-year time period. And that's where the longer-term action strategies will come in. We also include, you'll see Marshall County's and Bremen's, that we also have other strategies that are supportive of this vision that are outside the main priority, but are still something that is implementable to achieve like a 30-year vision. Do you think that answers?
It did on that, and
I was gonna say, and just to follow up too on the 30-year side, so I think it can't go understated that the county just went through Forward Kosciuszko, which really looks into the future as well. And so we're gonna take information, since we were a part of that, we're gonna take information from that will also help think through what the community has already told us where they wanna see us in the future, right? So I think we have a very great starting point to think long-term because of Forward Kosciuszko or because of HELP or all the other initiatives that are going on. So I think we have a good foundation to start from, and then, as Donnie said, build off of. So, and then if you want to take the other question.
And then the other question.
on the trails
On the
plan?
trails, yep. So definitely looking at parks and outdoor recreation, that is a component of trails. We would recommend that an actual like trails master plan may be a separate element that comes out of this initiative, but we definitely feel like because of Forward and HELP, that trails and outdoor recreation has been an expressed need and vision of the community, that it should definitely be incorporated into this plan to some degree and at some level.
Yeah, and I think to build further off of what Donnie said, the Marshall County Trails Master Plan is 208 pages. And it takes a very big deep dive into a number of different things. We would definitely recommend that the board take a look at that and consider doing something maybe similar in the future. Talking with folks like Craig Allebach over in Winona to think through some funding for that and to work on that. I think in this master plan, we could probably do some high-level work related to trails. I would be hesitant to say that on a budget of free, that we would be able to produce the same result of a deep dive like that, but probably start to think through all the trail work that's already out there, whether it's the regional visions or those kind of things, and to maybe start to look at some high-level opportunities, quick wins or those kind of things, but not necessarily as deep of a dive as, say, Marshall County went into. So I don't know if that helps.
It does, but I think just for the board, it's a discussion we might want to have. We need the 5-year plan, fully understand that, but I think a lot of our vision and direction is around trails. And so that might need to be a fast follower or work that we do in parallel, because there's going to be a lot of overlap, I believe, but again, I think we're going to have a lot of focus on trails.
And I know that Marshall County Trails Plan was done by a private consultant, but that we were involved in that with helping with the public engagement side of things, so we're familiar with it.
So I want to just piggyback on this discussion. So I think we're all committed to high-quality, long-term planning, but we've also been challenged to look at some low-hanging fruit. And it seems to be multi-purpose trails, with Blue Ways also a priority for many in our community. And the county not being interested too quickly in taking on maintenance responsibilities, for programming or for parks. So as Mike mentioned, he and I have been part of this DNR committee, and a major funding source for trails is the Indiana Trails Fund, ITF or ITP, whichever. And they have, their deadline for proposals is March, and their deadline is only once every 2 years. So is it possible to look at the 5-year plan somewhat simultaneously with something that we could submit a proposal as early as March for a trail, at least a trail segment? It may not be the trail master plan for the whole county, but for trails that have already been prioritized by the cities and towns and by the recreational organizations that have been working in this area. Does that make sense? We could do both at the same time?
Yeah, so I believe, you can confirm with DNR, or we could confirm on your behalf, for the ITP program, technically you don't have to have an approved 5-year Parks
Park
Master,
plan, right.
like Parks Master Plan. So it's not as if we would have to hurry through a Parks Master Plan to submit an application in March. The one thing, though, that I think long-term with ITP or Next Level Trails, or really any of those DNR funding programs, a master plan that supports trails is going to be helpful. Because when you think of Kosciuszko County and DNR's kind of vision for Kosciuszko County and trails, their vision is 0 and their trails are 0 for Kosciuszko County. So if you look at the visionary trail system that IDNR has laid out for the state, there is a blank, empty section for Kosciuszko County. So in order to show plan support and community support, the more documents, forward, help, or Parks Master Plan that exist that show a desire and need for trails is going to help those applications be more competitive. So all that's to say is that if you don't have a Parks Master Plan, it's not as if we couldn't apply for ITP this March. You could. The question would ultimately be in finding something that you feel is a quick win, you know, whether it's talking with Syracuse and North Webster, as Syracuse has plans to move their trail system down towards the middle school, and North Webster has talked about connecting. You know, I just use that as a for instance or for example. You know, Milford is working on we were able to help them with an NDOT funded application that will connect their community to Lake Wabi. So there are lots of different resources and lots of different efforts where you as the county might be able to help create a bridge for some communities and look at a segment that you could apply for. I don't have that prioritization today to tell you, well, number one on everyone's list is this. And so I think that would be an important aspect of trying to be able to find between now and March where that priority first set of wins would be. And I think that's something that could very well be a part of this process if we know upfront that that's what our focus may be on. What I don't want to do is say, we're going to develop a trails master plan for you, because I don't feel that that is something that we would do with this scope of work. I do think, though, that we could help prioritize, you know, a top 5 subsegments or something like that. So,
Yeah, I think when we get to the needs analysis for the Parks Master Plan that's required by DNR, during that component, we can definitely do the prioritization of the committee, the communities, and the boards on, you know, trails as well as then programs and parklands, et cetera. That could be supportive, like James was saying, for a March proposal.
Aggie, something that might help is like, as Greg Demopoulos is going to come up with the Red Walk Committee. And I think they have developed a master plan, you know, that MACOG could build off of, I think, to really be an impetus to get it going, moving, so.
Yeah, I had a question too, and I got a couple of them answered as we went around the horn here, which was kind of nice. Donnie, you did a really good job of expressing, you know, some of you guys' experience with other groups. So I've only have 2 questions remaining, and what are some of the things, especially us as a new park board, in reference to Marshall County, what are some of the hardships that you saw that group maybe overcome as they came together and started to work down this path? Maybe a lesson learned that we might be able to leverage for our group? So that's my first question.
The main thing is having a unified vision. That was something, a vision or mission, that was something that board really just did not have. And I think that was the kind of the first hurdle that they struggled to get over was, where do we go in the next 5 years? And that's where doing this kind of a planning process really opened up the park board's eyes, because then they heard from their constituents or the local residents, this is what we would like and want to prioritize. And so by working with them to create that vision through this process was something that they overcame. And you know, now they're having, you know, short wins with getting Mill Pond up and running, the mountain bike trail system up and running.
Thank you. And the second question, you mentioned that you guys are going to be the facilitators of the plan. So it really, you know, it speaks to me that this is going to be a large responsibility for our group, and that we really want to be able to absorb it and be successful with it. And assuming that we can get this approved today, in task 1, it mentions that MACOG will be responsive to the county's point of contact. And I was wondering if we owe you that information, or if you already have it, or is that something that we need to be able to consider who that point of contact would be, assuming that we would be able to move forward?
Yep, assuming upon agreement that something between Rob, Troy, or whomever, that could be considered upon, who does the county want to set as, like, I'll be the one for MACOG as that point of contact, but then from the county standpoint, who would I be conversing with, setting up meetings, making sure that we're, on track for meetings, et cetera.
Right, and that person would be kind of the glue between MACOG, the subcommittee, and all of the things that are going, the project manager more or less locally here on this board. Okay.
So that's something you don't have to set right now when we leave, or even in the moment. That's something you guys can converse and discuss
Okay,
thereafter. And then I did mention, and I don't know, this may be like a sub-answer to your question of, the Parks Board is welcome to serve. We need to establish a steering committee to make sure there's a broad representation across the county, that there's a number of aspects representative, related to Parks and Recreation. And obviously that would involve the Parks Board. So the entire Parks Board, being new, is definitely welcome to serve on that committee, but just be mindful, because if every member of the board comes together in a meeting setting, then we have to follow open door law.
right.
And so we would want a broad representation just beyond the Parks Board too. So upon agreement, that's something that myself and probably with the Parks Board, we could sit down and have a brainstorming session, and who would you guys like to see serve on this steering committee? And, again, not for the sake of this time, we can get more in specifics of, who should serve on there, are there good candidates? And then we can help, with the invitations to serve on that committee. But that's something, given the timeline, we would have to start pretty soon.
Yeah, thank you.
So turn my microphone back on. We are currently scheduled to meet once a month. It seems like with the schedule we've set, that may not be enough. Do you have a recommendation for us on how often we should be meeting? How often do you need us to meet? Maybe be the better way to put it.
Honestly, it was the same for Marshall County. If anything, Marshall County's deadline was a lot shorter than what we're experiencing in Kosciuszko. So honestly, in my opinion, James can correct me, once a month I think is sufficient. It would just, though, when we're establishing a steering committee, that's where we can kind of determine on the actual schedule. It would be helpful if we could have a set date already in mind. Be it that we piggyback off the Parks Board meeting, like whenever this ends, then we would transition over just to focus on the Parks Master Plan Steering Committee. Or is there another day and time that works best for everyone? So that's something, again, after this that we will determine. But I think once a month should be sufficient for helping us get this together.
Any questions about the technical provisions of the contract they have proposed?
The only additional suggestion, comment I have, and this kind of builds upon what Troy was asking, I understand about a single person point of contact, but because we're volunteers on a park board, it may be helpful for us to have almost like a small working group that's smaller than the overall steering committee that can help guide and keep things moving. And that doesn't mean we don't have a single point of contact, but then that small working group would include some county staff that will support the process and wouldn't require the steering committee maybe to need to meet as often. So they're advisors more than the process.
Yep. So like a
people.
leadership kind of committee?
Yeah.
Yep. For any of the plannings services we have provided, we have also recommended doing like a leadership kind of committee. So
Yeah.
if the single point of contact, it'd be more useful to do a leadership committee, then yes, we can definitely, work with you guys, who would want to serve on just that
Yeah.
smaller group, that we can converse to make sure between meetings that we're hitting milestones and the direction that we're going is relevant and applicable, for what you guys are hearing.
Yeah. And the hope is not to complicate or add
Correct.
time, but to keep things moving.
Correct, and that's the purpose for a
Efficiently
smaller
for-
group, so a
for
lot of
you
those
and
things
for
maybe
us.
could be accomplished by email or phone conference calls, or I could definitely come down in-person meetings, whatever needs to happen, but yeah, we can definitely work, put together a small working group, to kind of be behind the scenes, if you will.
Well, I think MACOG had sent out a redraft
I did, yep.
Last night. Hopefully everybody got it. I sent it out this morning. I think that's the one we're looking at for today. Is there any motions in related to that master plan?
I would like to make a motion that we accept the master plan, the most recent copy that was distributed this morning, for approval.
Second? Second. Matt Metzger seconds. Discussion. I'll start a little bit. I did reach out to Michelle, and we talked a little bit about authority to enter into this contract. And it is our belief that the Parks Department has authority to enter that without seeking further approval from the commissioners or the council, especially based upon the budget price of $0 that they have offered us. So if we elect to go that way, I think we are free to sign and get started today without any further delay. Anybody else? Well, then I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed, no. The ayes have it. We will sign the master plan then at the end of the meeting, and we'll get started. So exciting.
Thank you all. Looking forward to working with you guys.
Thank you, Donnie. Thank you, James. The next thing on our agenda, we asked a number of our county partners to come in. I hope for those of you county partners who are here, you'll see that we really want to learn what our jobs are, and you guys and ladies are going to be very helpful for us. So I don't have any particular order written down. Does anybody want to go first who's here as one of our county partners? Or I will call on somebody.
Right, good. Oh yeah, I was gonna say good morning too. Good afternoon. I'm Corian with the Kaskaskia County Convention Visitors Bureau. I am the executive director. I am providing some brochure material resources that we do related to our parks, trails, wild spaces in the county, which that we do as a resource in the visitor center. This is also available on our website. These are just our physical pieces at visitkaskiasco.org. So you can print these off, view them digitally so you save paper, whatever works. So first of all, thank you for inviting me to share and showcase what our parks and recreation in our area have. We have a unique county with lakes and so many different blueways, trails, et cetera, already established. So what I'm sharing with you today is our already existing resources, what we promote that's already existing. In a hope, because several of them are maps, related, sectioned off by county, that when you're going through our, MACOG and our, your strategic planning committees, seeing that connectivity that is already starting with several communities, if that is helpful to you at all. So if you're unfamiliar with the Convention and Visitors Bureau is, to most of us, I'll just quickly go. So our mission and our purpose is we are the official destination organization that promotes and assists the development of our visitor brand to leisure groups, corporate groups, travel markets, and our goal is to increase economic growth through tourism in whatever way, shape, or form that looks like. And our bureau serves as a community destination marketing organization and hopefully a active economic partner. So if you know where our visitor center is, it's located on US 30. Please, if you haven't visited, stop in, see all of the research that we do have. Not only what we provide, but what our other communities provide us to showcase their parks, their trails, and others in the community. So first really big piece that I wanted to share is our annual visitor guide. That is the piece we give a visitor that comes in, and a resident and a relocator, especially if they're trying to refamiliarize themselves. Just because you may have lived in Kaskaskia County your entire life, you may not know everything that's happening. And we're discovering that a lot of our local residents are coming in and, rediscovering their own communities, especially through the supplementary brochures that we have in there. That's not all of them, that's just a few. that they didn't realize that these trails existed. So I just wanted to share that. The visitor guide is our showcase piece that not only we use, but our organization partners use outside of our communities to promote Kosciuszko as a great place to live, work, and play. First of all, I want to showcase our Blue Spaces brochure. So, you know, since Kosciuszko County is the land of over 100 lakes, it's an important feature to promote. So that piece is showing all of the public access points for our Blue Spaces, where you can currently visit, access beaches, shoreline fish, where the muskies are, for a visitor or resident that may not be familiar with it, motorsports, marinas, etc. Our trail spaces, as it says, it's promoting the current trails that are currently existing and where they are. All of these brochures have a legend that helps showcase paved trails where restrooms are, parking, if they're open for mountain biking, all of that good stuff. There's also another piece that we have, it's called our Wild Spaces. Now this is really more, very similar in those same locations of our trail systems, similar, but it's really more showcasing our nature preserves, which we do have, and Kosciuszko is wonderfully unique for that. Same thing, showcasing how you can, you know, seek wildlife, all of those great things. And lastly, the other supplemental piece there is our play spaces. So this is really showcasing our parks in our county, from where the playgrounds are, where the gardens are, where parking is, all of those great things that are already existing. We're just providing it in a one-stop shop. All of these entities do have their own individual pieces that have them in the visitor center that we do also promote as well. Those are just those one-stop stops. And lastly, there is some marketing pieces that we're working on that have been super popular that we launched this year. It's a little flyer in there. It's called our Engagement Passports. This is a digital way to get our visitors engaged and seen. So if you visit we have a challenge passport related to trails specifically. If you visit those locations, you can win a water bottle or fidget spinner. And so that is where we're hearing a lot of the, those that are coming in and picking up these, we're hearing a lot of the feedback and positive feedback that we are getting for the trails that currently exist. That is what we're doing on a Parks and Recreation level. You can find this all in digital form on our website. We update when we can, when new things happen, constantly happening. So I don't know if that helps you in planning, but that is how we are marketing what is happening on that level for our community in our county. So if you had any other, we are a resource. So I know through this process, if you're needing what those amenities are, what those attractions are, how that's helpful, I'm sure Donnie, I am happy to help with anything he needs for you. We'll be able to help supply that, so.
So thanks, Corey. Hey, I had a chance to look through this material previously and learned a lot, right? I think there's a lot of reference materials that we will want to use in there because it also, as opposed to just looking at a map, it highlights what's actually being used in some ways because it's being marketed. And then this discussion also brought up part of the conversation we had with the DNR that we need to consider is as we build amenities, we will be attracting people from other counties and other regions. So it's just something to keep in mind on the scale of what we're doing. While it is for our county, we could be pulling in quite a few other people, which is great economically, but it could be a much higher usage level than we expect as well.
Any other questions for Corey? Thank you so much for coming today.
Oh,
Hopefully
you're
you'll-
welcome. I hope that was that's just a small portion, but please reach out to us when you ever need anything. So thank you for having us.
Another volunteer? Thank you, Greg.
All right. Well, most of you know me. I'm Greg Demopoulos. I'm here on behalf, we're asked to represent Ride Walk Advisory Committee. I also represent KCV. I know most of you guys, Aggie, you're newer, so I'd be glad to answer questions afterwards for you. But yeah, I want to just be a resource for you guys. As you guys know, I mean, we've been pushing trails, Troy, 25 years now is when I first started doing stuff. That's when the mountain bike trails started, and there were no greenways at that point. So jump ahead a little bit, 2011, KCV, the cycling club, hosted Bicycle Indiana and the Indiana Department of Health. Did a bicycle-friendly community seminar as part of Fat and Skinny Tire Fest years ago. And of that came about a grant to put a master plan together. And that's what ultimately led to the start of Ride Walk Warsaw Winona Lake. Fast forward 10 years plus now, Ride Walk Warsaw Winona Lake is not just Ride Walk Warsaw Winona Lake. It might as well be Ride Walk Kosciuszko, because we do have Carrie Groninger on the committee. We have Matt Sandy from the county on the committee. We have representatives from Milford, from Syracuse, from North Webster on that committee as well. And so just kind of looking at the bylaws that started Ride Walk Advisory Committee said, as stated, we are to promote the development and maintenance of bicycle and pedestrian facilities in Warsaw, Winona Lake, and Kosciuszko County. Promote the 5 E's of active transportation, engineering, education, encouragement, enforcement, and evaluative planning, and execute the plans and vision laid forth in the Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan, which was completed in 2013. So talking about, again, what MACOG is going to be doing with you guys and working with James and Donnie in the past on things with Winona Lake, I think it will be critical to get that, initial plan for the Parks Board, what you guys need, but then also doing a active transportation master plan for the county, because certainly through Forward Kosciuszko and the HELPS Committee, those are some of the things that are coming out of that feedback. The smaller communities need guidance on how to go about doing those things. But then even when you look at the Ride Walk Master Plan, there are projects that kind of go out into the county but then stop because Warsaw and Winona Lake don't have jurisdiction for that, can't make those calls. And even Syracuse, North Webster, as some of those infrastructure projects go out into the county, well, some of the grants that they try to get, they can't get because we don't have a Parks Board. We do now. So I think the critical thing is making sure there are so many stakeholders. I don't know how many counties take on projects like this where it's the county focus. And so there are a growing number of entities that are certainly interested for varying reasons, whether it's health and wellness or social and economic. But making sure that all those stakeholders are talking to each other and collaborating. So I know I've talked to Mike and shared, hey, there's access to the Ride Walk Master Plan. I've sent, I think some of you guys have that. Matt, you certainly have access to it. There is the MACOG's active transportation plan for their area, the region. And then, the Winona Lake plan. So those are all things, certainly, and then Forward Kosciuszko, things to certainly be plenty of reading material for you guys to go through, but just making sure then that it kind of all comes together in a grand plan and stakeholders knowing what their role is. I mean, that's the nice thing that helped guide Ride Walk, was understanding the stakeholders and continuing to make sure. And it's a revolving door. People come and go. But you got to kind of have that vision document that you can come back to, and then you reevaluate. Land access might be different 10 years from now, and so grants that are available are different. So there's a lot of changing parameters. But yeah, I'm here to be a resource, and it's weird to think I'm the old guy. I've been around long enough to see all of it happen, so I'm here to answer any questions you guys have.
Any questions for Greg?
Greg, I mean, I'm sure that, I know that MACOG and Ride Walk have talked together, but does it make sense that they see, I mean, do they have this document, the master plan, or can we share
It
it
should,
with
because
them?
Dustin's part of
Because that would surely help you guys,
yeah.
like, really, like, we jumpstart, like you were saying, we need to get this thing going. I think that this is a very comprehensive plan that's already in place for the Winona and Warsaw, but if we could really help to just.
Yeah, there certainly would be aspects in that that will probably help you to the point of trying to find that low-hanging fruit. There's the project to get around Winona Lake. Well, a portion of that is in the county. There's a portion to get over to Eisenhower. Some of that goes into county land. Getting out towards Crazy Egg, because we know we want to eventually get to Etna Green, there's opportunities there. That's low-hanging fruit that you already know is there. It might be easier, especially with the route around Winona Lake, already having an engineering study, and can talk with Justin, the transportation, or the planner for City of Warsaw. So there is some low-hanging fruit there that you guys can look at, but certainly MACOG will be able to help you kind of as you go through that plan. And certainly working with us, Dustin from MACOG is part of the Ride Walk Committee. So you already have MACOG's active transportation planner part of the committee. And so it's just making sure that you know, the dots to connect in the process. And certainly all of us on the committee are willing to help. However, we're certainly going to be prepared to step in as needed.
So 2013, where does the time go?
Seriously. 1997 is when I first laid a shovel on the trails. That's what's crazy. That seems like yesterday, but it's not. My body tells me that every morning.
So a caution, because it's a plan from nearly a decade ago, we don't want to assume it's still the best plan or where the public has the best support for it. So we want to, and I think the public input process through the 5-year master plan may be an opportunity to kind of vet and perhaps make changes that make sense today that a decade ago nobody could have
Right.
felt like that was the best way to
Right.
go.
And certainly what you'll see is even from some of the exercises done in Forward Kosciuszko and whatnot, there's a lot of, I think maybe here, and so really until you dive into that thorough master plan to really guide and look at where could we truly look at accessing land and purchasing land or whatever it's going to involve, that going through those exercises again will be important, especially as you go out into the county. And then knowing that you have several communities working through the HELPS committee and through the Forward Kosciuszko planning that want to have that, they're already starting to put in their own plans that we didn't know about, in 2013. So some of the exercises and work done to figure out how do we connect the dots. If Milford's doing this to this point, and we eventually want to connect to Leesburg, any of the work that has been done with the MACOG active transportation plan mapping or anything that, Forward Kosciuszko looked at, need to reevaluate all that. So.
Well, Greg, thank you very much. It is, for those of you who don't know Greg, it's hard to understate his importance to cycling in our community. And so
I appreciate it.
from the board,
It's a
thank you.
pleasure. This is truly exciting. So, yeah, thank you guys.
Who would like to go next? Holly, I see you looking up. I think your glare volunteered you.
I think Holly just volunteered.
No, I didn't prepare anything, but I'm Holly Hummich with Winona Lake Limitless Park. I know most of you. I just wanted to say we also would be willing to help in whatever way we can. I also brought Ashley McGinnis and Christy Myers from my park board. Christy is a wealth of park knowledge, park and trails, actually, over 30 years experience. So pick her brain. She's going to kill me, but we just have the familiarity of the master plan. This past 21, we were just approved for our park master plan. I believe you said you had. But we also just found out within the last week and a half, 2 weeks, we were recommended by the state for approval for our Land Water Conservation Fund grant. And that's a $500,000 grant. So I'm pretty proud of us. Hasn't been made public yet. But so whatever we can do to assist and help you all in this is,
So, Tom, in terms of your paved trails, and for those of us out there, paved as opposed to dirt trails. Where are you guys at? Where are you going? Because I don't know where we're headed in terms of low-hanging fruit. I'm curious where you guys are at.
And that is really a Craig question, which I was hoping he might be able to come today. Craig is the trails guy, Greenway and Trails. We just are kind of the trailhead, so we service that, let's see, I'm gonna read Christie's notes. So, the greenway that goes right through the park, which was an advantage for the ADA component of our grant. So that, bringing that in, like, we have some other things in mind. But as far as specifics for length and destinations, that's Craig.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Any other questions for Holly?
Nope.
Well, again, thank you
All
for
right,
coming.
yeah, of course.
Oh,
Oh, I was just curious, your LWCF
Yes, ma'am.
grant, what is that for? Is it the park downtown or?
It is for the Limitless Park, so it'll be for completion of the park and playground, additional parking, playground area, yeah, all of it. So we're pretty excited.
Great.
Thank you.
anybody else? Jody, would you like to talk? So we've talked a lot about paved trails.
Yeah,
Now we're going to hear something else.
yeah, my name's Jody Claypool. I'm here representing Tippy River Adventures and Paddlers for Conservation. Tippy River Adventures is a premier or white glove service provider of transportation, kayaks, and canoes on the Tippecanoe River. And Paddlers for Conservation is a nonprofit who's focused on maintenance and cleanup of the Tippecanoe River. I'm not sure if you guys are very familiar with it. I'm sure if you brought Nate Bosch, he would tell you a lot more about it, but we have a very unique and valuable resource in our backyard. I think he'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but it's within the top 10 most vital rivers in the nation because of biodiversity. We've got a resurgence of river otters and endangered mussel species, and if you've ever been blessed enough to go down it, Mike has, it's fantastic. It's a blessing. So I encourage you guys to come out and experience it. And as a Parks Department, I think you guys would be well-served to be strategic in how you connect to this Blue Way. We've got a whole audience of participants when they engage with the river, our captured audience. And they go one way along this river. And if we're deliberate about how we curate that experience, and we provide additional touch points with trails and walking, and we envision this place being, the premier destination for second home living, we can encourage people from the community to get out and go from one aspect of the county, one community in the county to the other, as well as invite people outside of the county to come in and experience it. And so I'd just like to plant that as a seed in your mind and continue participating in the discussions if I'm able.
Well, Blue Ways were very definitely part of the charge given to us by Commissioner Groninger, so I'm very happy that you were able to come today. Any questions for Jody?
Yeah, it's probably a question out of ignorance on Blue Ways in general, but what's your experience on the need for the Tippy River from what we could be doing? Is it creating a trailhead, an access point,
That's a great question.
getting out of the river
Yeah.
point, those types of things?
Yeah, and I don't know I don't necessarily understand what the full charge of the committee is. But if it is mapping out access points along the river, how the trails align with or cross over the river, or any sort of, planned maintenance or, how you craft the ingress, egress access points along the river. All of that, I think, would be important as part of this, if that answers your question.
And then are there other water sources that would be significant in our county beyond the Tippy River that we should be considering?
Yeah. So I'm hyper-focused on the Tippy River just because I see that as an immediate win. It's already something that you guys can attach yourselves to as a win for the community. But we've got a lot of lakes, and the lakes have a lot of branching. I mean, we were just talking about how Center Lake branches into Walnut Creek, which branches into the Tippy. So you do have this network of adventures that can start from any of these touch points for the participants who come into the county. So it's not just Tippy River. I'm just saying Tippy River for me is the most obvious win right now, but I see that quickly branching out as we get more and more people on the river and experiencing it. So
Are there any, I know rivers can have designations that can limit the access or
Yeah.
what you can do with them. Are there any, what's the status for the Tippy River and does that need to change for what we're doing over time?
another great question. So right now, the Tippy River is designated as non-navigable. So what that does is that limits the ability of the participants who are traveling down the river. We have asked Craig Snow and anybody who's got, access to him, just reinforce this. We want to get legislation in place to change that to navigable. If we can get it redesignated as navigable, what that does is it creates an easement on either side of the river. So now the people who are on the water don't have to stay in their boats if they decide they want to, get off to have a little picnic or hang out, or if they tip their boat over or whatever. As well as it improves and makes it easier for the state to take over the burden of navigating and curating the river itself. So yeah, if we can get it redesignated as navigable versus non-navigable, I think that would help us a ton.
Along those lines, have there been any control structures that's been identified to be removed to help change that? Or do you know anything about the status of some of the control structures that are off by Fox Farm Road?
I don't.
Okay.
If I'm understanding your question correctly, I'm not sure if I
Yeah, just
necessarily
the
understand.
dam.
Some of the low
Yeah,
dams.
there's.
Yeah, so
there's still head-
the dam that was there is no longer there. So you should come out. You should check it out. So we're going to put you in right over there at the quarry, right over at Kerry Groninger's Gene G, right? And you go right over that dam. There's a little bit of white water. It's kind of fun. Yeah,
All right, I'll take you up on it.
right on. Any other questions?
Again, thank you, Jody, for coming today.
Okay.
And
I have one, yeah, but I think this is pretty quick. Does the designation Blue Way, is that just a term we're using, or is a Blue Way different somehow than just a river?
I think
Or
right
stream.
now, I think it's being colloquially used as something similar to how you would use a greenway. So it's
Okay.
like, it is a river, unless you guys have a technical term I'm not aware of.
maybe Maycog does.
Okay. Yeah, I assume it is a river. It's a waterway that people use like they would use a trail.
Okay.
So my interpretation of that is just that if something's called a Blue Way, then I can probably get on it and kayak or canoe it.
Yeah.
Whereas something's just a river, I don't know if that's as labeled as something to go do, but I don't know if that's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, a water source, you can navigate with a piece of equipment. Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. And if you stick around, if Jody sticks around, we have a big map up here. He can show you on the map what we're talking about. It was really interesting. He showed us beforehand, so.
Yeah, if anybody wants to come out, I'll show you exactly where you meet me, and we'll put you on the river.
Hey, Bales, I know Syracuse here. Do you want to come up and say a few words? We'd love to hear, especially about this trail down to North Webster. Oh.
Hi, I'm Erlene Yentis with Syracuse Wawasee Trails, if I haven't met you guys before.
I don't know if it's possible. Could you try to lower the microphone just a little bit?
Is that better?
A little. It's hard to hear.
I'll start over. I'm Erlene Yentis with Syracuse Wawasee Trails, for those that do not know me. Basically, Trails has been in, Syracuse Wawasee Trails has been in existence for 20 years. We currently have a little over 12 miles of trails. Last year, our focus was completing a feasibility study to go around the rest of Lake Wawasee and have connectivity to the new ball fields. And out of that came our announcement 2 weeks ago of where our next construction project will be, which is a continuation of Conklin Bay. We had named that trail, it's going to be called Wawasee South. We are currently working on some marketing material, so as soon as we get some of that, I will provide that to you guys. It's exciting that you guys are on this board, and thank you for volunteering. And I look forward to collaborating and with all other trail entities as well, because with North Webster also getting to the middle school, eventually you'll have connectivity between two communities, which is also huge. Is there any questions?
So the proposed trail between Syracuse and North Webster, is any of that on county property? Just curious.
It's county
Okay.
from
it
our
is.
side.
Got it.
Yeah.
And what's the timing for that?
We don't have a timeline, we just announced it.
Okay.
Like I reminded everyone in attendance at our fundraiser, that Conklin Bay was 5 years in the making, so this isn't going to happen overnight.
Got it. And in any of your activities, have you submitted for the ITP grants or the LWCF grants?
We're working on that right now.
Okay.
So we're looking to see what grants we can apply for.
Great.
And the other thing I also wanted to mention, as trails develop, it will also improve events in our community, like the Fat and Skinny and our Tour de Lakes events, so, which draws in people to Kosciuszko County as well.
The Syracuse to North Webster Trail, is that what sort of a phase is that in right now? You mentioned that it's going to take some time. Have you
As
guys
far
done a
as North
design?
Webster or our trail?
Pardon?
As far as North Webster or Syracuse?
North Webster.
I know North Webster, Dan was at our fundraiser, so him and I need to meet again, but I know he is in the process of raising funds to get to that. I know it's about a 2.2 mile stretch for us. It's a little shorter for him because they're working on developing a trail through town first that will follow 13 and then also get to the middle school.
Thank you.
Is that Dan from North Webster?
Yes.
What's his last name?
Dystrup, THR,
okay.
yep.
So we are so far in the hole on learning that I don't necessarily know all the people I should be communicating with. So, great. Thank you. Any other questions for her?
Thanks.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Okay, so I think I have fun things to tell you after listening to everybody. And you guys tell me, oops, I dropped my pen. You guys tell me how you want me to this go. I can explain the HELP program, which I explained a little bit to and Mike.
So let's back up one step. For everybody who might be watching out in the community, why don't you introduce yourself and where you're
Yes,
from?
I am sorry. I apologize. This is about the 20 millionth of these presentations. So I'm Amy. I'm the community coordinator with HELP. And so I am not 100% sure how familiar you guys are with HELP. So
You
I
might be
can-
surprised. You worked with my daughter all summer, but I really don't know.
Your daughter is, okay. Yes, Ashley is your daughter.
Yes.
I've been waiting to meet you. She is a joy. I love that girl. She's going to go places. So I can explain HELP, or I can get to the good stuff. So it depends on what you want me to do and how you want me to structure this for you.
Can you briefly describe HELP?
Brief
I
is,
think
I
we-
will do my best to do brief, because HELP is a huge, robust program. So HELP is basically a program and a grant together. It was obtained from OKRA, the Office of Community and Rural Affairs, which is in the Lieutenant Governor's Book of Business. And the main focus of OKRA is to support rural communities. And MACOG, wherever James is, talked Carrie Groninger and the whole community into applying for the HELP program after Forward Kosciuszko, for the purpose of having funding to be able to move forward with projects that were identified. And due to this HELP program, with the match that we have an additional $1 million as a match for the communities that are participating. So this is a PowerPoint presentation that I just printed off. It talks about the details. The main parts of that is that the individual communities that are participating are Etna Green, Pearston, Mentone, and Milford. It's not that we wanted others to not come along, it's just that they did not want to earmark the 30% of ARPA funds and/or go through this one-year planning process. That's a lot of time and a lot of money, so that was not palatable to all of the communities. in Kosciuszko County. So the ones that participated, we have been going through each of these process points. We are currently in the weeks 26 through 39, which is phase 3. And basically, this is where the good stuff happens. All the rest of, well, let me back up. It is wonderful to get community engagement and to put teams together, but we all like, I know that Jody and I've talked to Ryan Martin, we want things to happen. We want to stop the planning and move things forward. I've heard that about 1,000 times. So, and I am probably under that personality as well. So, in the really neat part about what I get to say today is in stage 3, we have chosen as some of our county projects, trails. And so we've got actually one of our little committee members is here. So Greg sat and tortured himself with us to go through the process. It was a joy to have him there. But so the committees that we have, we had advancing e-connectivity, promoting community wellness, quality of place, and strengthening local economies. Those were the funding sources or the areas of focus that phase 3 looked at for project ideas that were submitted to review for the funding for the $1 million. And I am leaving a lot out, so you're probably going to have a lot of questions, but I could probably be here for 30 minutes to explain this program, and I'm pretty sure you want to get to the good stuff.
We do.
So, okay. So through the phase 3, we have 2 projects on the quality place that were identified as related to trails and blueways, and then 1 on the promoting community wellness. And yesterday, so this is hot off the press, yesterday I met with the county community member team, and they have tasked me today to ask you if you would potentially consider working with us and Greg and whoever is available to fill out, and I brought copies of this for you, project worksheets related to 2 items that you guys just spent a long amount of time. I was sitting in the back just wanting to come and saying, I can provide funding for those things that you're talking about. I was trying not to jump up and say that. But Carrie has asked me to ask you if you would consider doing 2 project worksheets that we could potentially consider for funding for that $1 million match and also the $1.2 million ARPA funds. Not all of that is going to you. Don't get too excited yet, but the projects that they felt like would be ones they would want to hear is a Blue Way and Greenway plan, so master plan. That's one of the project worksheets that they would like to have submitted. And then the other is they would like to look at a specific low-hanging trail project in the county that we could do through the HELP program. So this will be something that both MACOG will have to assist us with and the auditor, because the funding that is the match grant is a CDBG fund source. Aggie and I had a very lengthy conversation when we met for coffee about that. So wonderful, the opportunity to have the funding, but there are some restrictions, and it's national objectives. One is that the area that we fund has to be in a 51% or higher low to moderate income. And so when we look at the trail that we will put, we have to look at an area that potentially meets those guidelines, and MACOG can help us with that to look at census data, census tracts to figure out where a trail that meets that. So unfortunately, most likely, it probably wouldn't be Warsaw or Winona Lake or some of the larger areas that have a little bit more money coming into them, but potentially an external part, Mentone, Etna Green, somewhere in between. So that is what I was sitting there very excited to tell you, because I think your work is wonderful. I sent another email to Ty Hauk. I am working to connect Mike with the gentleman that I worked with in South Carolina. I was the chamber marketing and sales director there, and I did a lot of trail work with the Swamp Rabbit Trail when I was there in Greenville, South Carolina. So I still stay in contact with the gentleman that is in charge of the county trail system in South Carolina, and asked him if he would consider guiding and directing as you guys work to figure out best practices, what's good, what's bad, what are some potential pitfalls through the process. So that is a lot of words I just said that I could have said more, Do you have any questions related to the HELP program first, or?
Well, I want to make sure I understood what you said our possibilities are from Commissioner Gruninger. One was help with funds to actually do the Blue Way and Greenway master plan. Is that one?
Yes, sir.
So in terms of the trail master plan, like we were talking about earlier, that's sort of all tied into that. Is that correct?
Yes, and so
Okay.
that may be kicked up a little bit on that's what I felt like I was sitting here and this young man was doing great work, and then I thought, well, I might just throw a little kink in his plan for a second. So that would be kicked up a little bit on the to-do list because the funding has some guidelines related to timelines.
And then the second one is hopefully to find a trail project we can do. So almost if we want to use the term shovel-ready, find something shovel-ready and get going.
And the only caveat with that, which would be probably not difficult, I know that many in the room could probably help us, because Greg came up with a lot of these ideas and others from the committee. Just looking at figuring out the best possible place that would meet the expectations. So probably a conversation with MACOG or sitting down with them to help to ensure we don't want to put you on a path that would not be able to be fundable. And it's federal funding, so there are guidelines related to that. But yes, you are correct. The
Okay.
second would be that. So we have the project worksheets here, and I did bring copies just to see this. And the reason this is one of the parts of the grants that we have to do is in this, ending this stage and moving into the next phase is to be able to have these worksheets filled out for the projects that will be reviewed by the local unit of government that is providing their 30% match. And that local unit of government is the county, specifically for the projects that I was speaking about.
Do you need permissions, approvals, anything from us today other than?
I think Carrie just wanted to make sure, so he had asked me to kindly ask you guys to do this, because we have very busy committee members who have identified these projects, but we will need some assistance to be able to move forward to get the details built out for the two projects. So I think he just wanted you guys to confirm or deny that you would be willing to work with myself and the team to be able to get these worksheets completed. The hard part about that, which James knows, is the deadline for this, and this is just what it is October 1st. So this is part of the grant. It's been a mad dash since the first day I started on this in February. So we have successfully completed all of the phases, and we will do this, successfully complete this as well. It's just a matter of figuring out with your structure and the partners that potentially are in this room or others, what would be the most effective way to move forward to get those two project worksheets completed, if you agree to move forward with that.
I have a question. I'm trying to get caught up.
I know, this is I just laid it out. I
Yeah.
didn't have like 1 hour to give you the normal presentation.
Yeah. So you mentioned the second component. Well, the first one were the two worksheets, and then the second component was the trail project. And you mentioned in accordance with some guidelines, and you visited those just briefly. What were kind of the essence of those guidelines?
So we are still learning. If you're speaking of the matching funds, the $1
Yeah.
million match, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
And so we have a meeting this Friday with the young lady at Okra that will be helping us to administer, as well as MACOG, the CDBG. So the two things that we know is that it either has to meet the national objective of low to moderate income, which is 51% or more, or be related to slum or blight, which I don't think anything related, no. And James, James can share a little. James is he's my master related to the CDBG, so.
CDBG, it's a funding program, community development block grant program, and it's from HUD, Housing and Urban Development. So Okra administers that for the state of Indiana. There's three major objectives that are national objectives for HUD. The first is that projects serve low to moderate income, so 51% or greater, and that's of a service area. So the thing we'll have to talk through with Okra is, what is the service area of a trail? Is it a census tract? Is it the county? And that's where it'll be critical for us to get the right service area with Okra, so that we can meet that LMI. either through census data or like what we did in Milford is we had to do income surveys where we had a random sample of households where we had to go knock and ask if we could know their income levels. It's a really fun process.
Not fun. Fun, not fun.
Yeah, but that's determined by the service area. So there's LMI, low to moderate income. So that's most likely going to be the national objective that we have to hit here. The other national objective is slum blight, and so that's blight clearance. You have a dilapidated building. So I guess if a trail was going through a old industrial facility, you could try to make that case. It's most likely not going to be the case that you're going to attempt to make for that project. It's possible, it's plausible, it's just most likely not going to be. The third one is,
It's area-wide with limited clientele.
yeah.
But wasn't it also like emergency or something?
Yeah, so
They
the
got
third
rid of that
one, the third one would be an emergency need,
But that's gone.
but that's not going to be the case in this scenario. There's not an emergency need where there are no other resources and there's some natural disaster that has occurred that you're trying to then rebuild. So you're going to try and have to hit low to moderate income. That'll be determined by the service area, and we'll be helping the county work through that process. So, you know,
So we'll probably become very good friends through this process to try to figure this out because it really takes a village to move through this. This is the good stuff part of this. I mean, we've went through all the other, I mean, we've got a lot of community data and input, which can help with the other part of that, the process with the master plan. But this right here is where the rubber meets the road, is that we've had these individuals, 48 to be exact, to go through a 2-month process of analyzing data from their own community members and determining what makes the most sense related to their expertise as well, to determine that these projects, which 3 came out as trails, related to trails. And so blueways and greenways. And so that was neat for us to talk about last night. And then the fact that I'd already spoken to Mike to be here today, it was just made sense to present this option to be able to work together with MACOG and other partners that are interested to be able to make that happen in 3 weeks. So I don't know what that process will look like. I've not known what other processes look like. We'll just have to navigate this together. So there may be some ambiguity related to the process, but if you're willing to go on this journey, then there could be some funding for these specific projects at the end.
Well, I think clearly this aligns with everything we've spoke of so far today. Michelle, do you think we need a motion or a vote or anything to go along with this?
Yes, because she needs some specific direction going forward. So if you had a smaller steering committee, subcommittee that could work with her through these sheets, if that's the direction that you choose to go, because yeah, our timeline, anything with working with health.
It's
is
pretty
always
tight.
Very, very tight.
Yeah.
And since it's the next 2 weeks, yes, if we could have a motion.
Okay. Before we make a motion, anybody want to volunteer so we can get the motion correct initially?
So let's just get the timing right.
Okay.
So this is due October 1st, so we have about 2 weeks. And if we put a subcommittee on it, which is fine, but are we going to have to re-meet as a full group before we can submit the worksheets? Or are we giving approval to the subgroup to,
Yes, you should not have to meet again as long as you are approving through this motion that you will have a subcommittee that will meet with Amy to complete these sheets and get them submitted by that timeline.
Because it's not going to bind our organization,
Correct.
whatever the recommendation is.
This is so that the worksheet can be completed, and
Right.
then we will have a formal presentation of all worksheets from all, I believe we determined there are about 11 projects that will be presented to a combined board? Is it going to be the commissioners and council? Commissioners and council at a later date so that they can listen to all of the projects and then earmark specific amounts of money related to the multiple projects that are submitted.
my other question is maybe to the larger audience is, are there a few projects that are pretty obvious that we're going to be able to put on this worksheet? You don't have to name what they are, but are there lists available that say, yeah, we could probably identify those?
So if Greg is available, I know Greg's got lots of stuff going on, but Jody maybe can
Yeah.
help with the Blue
Both nodding their
Waves,
heads
so-
vigorously, so that's a good sign.
Yeah, so if we can have them, I mean, I know it's a tight timeline and and schedules are tight, but if we can have the best of the best who have the most knowledge, I think that we can get these worksheets most robustly filled out so that it's a full good project versus what I could do by myself.
Is there going to be a need to, I'm probably going too deep now, I apologize, but is this going to be like a lot of research work, or is this going to essentially, if we're, if we've got good ideas, this is like a 3 or 4 hour sit down and we probably have it?
So if you look at the worksheet, which I gave you all my copies, I mean, basically that is the information that has to be filled out.
Okay.
And so it is some information. I mean, it talks about, the ownership of the land. I mean, there's different parts and pieces. It would be relative to whatever. And then I'll need to determine with Okra and Purdue which they would like for us to put the plan. I'm assuming that would be more of a program worksheet. So I will get those details worked out, but it's that information right there. And ultimately, this is just so we have the basis to be able to make the full presentation to the combined body so that a decision can be made. And then after that part, that's where the fun stuff comes in, because I get to work with MACOG and Oprah and others to be able to figure out the grant requirements so that we can write the grants and do what's necessary to be able to release the funding. Our timeline for full projects related to anything chosen with CBDG or with ARPA would be everything has to be earmarked for invoices by 2024 and spent by 2026, correct? She keeps me straight on that. So that is the timeline. So when looking at the plan or looking at the trail, we'd have to have it completed, all money expended by 2026.
Anybody want to volunteer? I know my time is probably limited the next 2 weeks. That's my problem.
I'm interested, but I only have a few days I'm actually in town, and some of the work might have to be done remotely for me. But if no one else is available, I'll certainly help attack this.
I'm pretty much in the same boat as you are, Rob and Mike. It's just tight.
Yeah. Welcome to how this whole process has been. It's been, I get called, I have to get something done, and then I have to basically hoodwink somebody into getting it
This-
done in 2.5 seconds with a smile.
This may help, Mike. I did talk to Jennifer Stewart with the K-21, and she gave me a list of people who have projects and are highly active and want to get something done. So they might be able to help us get something done in that low-income area.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
And Jennifer is a part of the process, as well as Lisa Harmon. I mean, we have some others who have been a part. We have individuals who are part of this. It's just a matter of getting park board representation and then figuring out from our core team, the community members, what we have as far as a full team to be able to get these 2 worksheets done. And we also have MACOG, their support as well. So we don't have to try to figure this all out on our own. We have robust support to be able to move forward.
Are there any meetings or any dates that are already set for this that the person would need to commit to? That might be helpful.
So we have not. So right now, currently where I'm at is I've got meetings for the next 2 weeks with all of the other communities that are part of this to assist them with their worksheets and do the same thing I did yesterday. So in between that, I mean, I could schedule relatively flexible. I mean, I'm here 30 hours, and I sometimes have 2 hours, and I run back to Fulton County and come back. I mean, whatever we need to do to make this work for you guys is what we'll do to make it move forward.
My question is kind of along the lines of Mike's. Is it an oversight role from the Parks Board Committee, or is it somebody to actually fill out the information on the sheets?
I think it's both, probably. Ultimately, somebody to help fill out the sheet with the experience and expertise that's sitting at this table, and would be the best guesstimate.
And after October 1st and the deadline is met, is it a continuation of participation that's being sought
Yeah,
as
so
well?
this will be a journey, partnership. And so after October 1st, We will determine after all the project worksheets have been completed and Purdue gives us the ability to have an Okra to move forward with our final presentation, then we'll choose a date that works for both the combined commissioners and council for the full presentation of all the worksheets. And then at that point, they will have the hard task to deliberate which projects that the money will be spent on and the amount that the money will be spent towards those projects. And then after that point, we will work together to try to figure out how to write the grants, what other grants are available, and how the best way to execute this. So basically, my 2023 to 2026 is going to be project management with each and every organization that has a project that is submitted and approved by the county and the other communities. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay. So we can, I mean, ultimately, it's very ambiguous. There's much ambiguity to it that we just work together, and I have to be flexible, like, what was that green thing, the little Gumby? I have to be flexible. I just have to work with whatever, whoever, however, because this is something that we have entered into, and I've been employed to work with the entire team. So that I am at your disposal to work to make this happen.
So I have time, but I don't have the knowledge of what would be needed. So I'd be happy to work on this, but I need to be funneled information. And as I look at the worksheet, it sounded like one of the two projects is master planning. And it
So
just,
that, yeah, I'm going to check.
it's like this worksheet doesn't seem,
And I feel the same way.
relevant.
So I'm going to check with Julie and see, she had given me another worksheet, which is a program worksheet. I think I actually have them back here, that I have made copies of that as well. So I can give you one of those copies, but I will double check to make sure that the plan would be under the program. Do you know, James?
Yeah, so for the.
I think that's more of a Purdue thing, but.
You're talking about the plan side of things.
Yeah, with this strategic investment plan, what would you, because we've got the two worksheets, the project and the program. I would assume that the plan would be under the program worksheet, but.
Yeah, you would fill out a program worksheet. It's probably not going to be the best example of a program worksheet. It would be really basic, but, you know, Okra does fund planning work. And so ultimately a plan like a Blue Ways, Greenways master plan would theoretically be a fundable element because they do planning work like in Milford. Milford's doing a master utility study right now that's being funded through Okra. So the project is the plan. It's largely a consultant services kind of thing. It's a pretty quick fill out compared to a lot of the questions probably aren't going to be applicable, right? But yeah, I would fill one out because a few communities may have planning work like the county might have here. So I think it'd be a project worksheet. It's just a lot of the questions are probably
Or
going to be
program worksheet.
Sorry, program worksheet.
Yeah.
But it's maybe not going to be the most robust or detailed because the work is consulting and planning. So.
And as a point of reference, which I did not want to waste time saying this, but I think it would behoove me to say this, is that we are the first of three to go through this very new program. So we are the trailblazers in the process. So everything that we have done, we have had to work with Okra. So not only are we the trailblazers, we are the double trailblazers because James let them ask for a special exception. But they asked for a special exception to bring in 5 local units of government. The program was actually intended for 1. And so Kosciuszko County, being very entrepreneurial in nature, which is fun, I would get bored easily. So, they said, we don't want to do 1. We would like to bring friends with us. So can we bring all 14? Well, only 4 of them said yes. But so this is new for Okra. They've never done it like this that I understand ever.
Yeah, I mean, so HELP is a completely new program, but essentially it's modeled after Stellar. And those that are familiar, Stellar has had different iterations where sometimes it's been one community, and sometimes, like in Marshall County's case, it was regional in its nature, or Northwest Allen County. And so the approach that Kosciuszko County took with the momentum building off of Forward is, well, we've all already been working together to create unified vision, now can help essentially provide seed funds for some of those high priority projects. And so we wanted to do that as a group rather than as an individual community. And so that's why a number of the starter communities joined on, because they had projects of note to move forward. So yeah, I think it'll be good outcomes for all involved. It's just a learning process, because Okra is learning this program. We're building an airplane while we're flying it. So.
And I make that point of reference because I want you to know that there is no right or wrong answer. And so we are literally working with the other partners and Okra to execute this very new program with our unique exception. And so I don't want anybody to have fear that we're not going to be able to do it right. We are doing it, and then they're guiding us in the process. So there's no right or wrong answer in that. So, and just as another point of reference for the parks plan, the major one is that we intend to expect that our other help communities will have all park projects. So it looks like Mentone's going to do a park project to renovate their park. Etna Green is going to do that. Pearson's going to do that as well. And then I think that Milford is focusing on creating a beautification between the trails and the downtown. So there's a lot of, most of the projects that seem to be chosen for this help have all been outside. So your work is very important, and there's a lot of great momentum happening as you guys are thrust into figuring all of this out together, so.
Maybe as it relates to the low-hanging fruit, building a trail project, and James, maybe this is for you as well. How far along does that have to be? Like engineering study with specific costs already determined, or estimates because we know we have land access?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, you're going to want something that has more than a conceptual, right? So something that has some engineering and understanding of right of way. Not necessarily,
Yeah.
if it's on community-owned property or anything like that, that could be great, because we're going to have to figure out the right of way aspects of that. But you're also not talking about a $2 or $3 million trail. You're talking about a specific segment extension. And then the challenging aspect of all of that is that trying to make sure that that falls in the census tract or a township or an area that is also down the line. So that'll be the additional layer of challenge.
Well, it sort of seems to me, and I think we're all struggling to see how we can achieve the goal, and I think we definitely want to achieve the goal. This is great, but somebody's going to have to provide us the project to put on the worksheets, is I think of what it looks like to me. We're not going to go out and find this in 2 weeks from scratch. So, you know, is this something where we should look through the worksheets you have and sign on to one? Do you want us to go to like Winona Lake and say, we know you want to get out to Stonehenge, is that ready? Should we put that down? I probably have 4 days next week. I could do something, but it's going to be it. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It's what we've lived with the entire time. It's been trying to navigate through all of this with limited. We have successfully done it. So I figure out, my job hired by the county is to figure out how it happens. So they gave me an impossible task, and then I have to make it executable. Is that right, Greg? I mean,
If it helps, there's a Ride Walk Advisory Committee meeting on Monday.
so that might be.
So there will be representatives that could potentially identify a project and let you know what engineering studies have already been done or what projects are kind of in the pipeline, to where we could look at one of those and go, here we go.
What time is that, Greg?
That is at 8:30 over at City Hall.
Yeah, I have to be in court at 9.
I can, so timing is tight, we know that, but we need to make a game effort at this. With those earlier nodding heads, I think we have some volunteers with Greg and Jody to help us with this. And if Aggie's willing to do it, and if we can, between the Ride Walk meeting and as at least the 4 of us, including myself, can meet in the first 3 days of next week, and I guess Amy as well, just to see where we are and what we can get done in that time frame. Then I am available to do it. And then anything after that, though, is gonna, for me, would just have to be remote because I'm traveling.
And I
So-
know currently already we have, which we could bring you in if we needed to, I think it's Monday, the 19th, from 1 to 3. MACOG will be here, somebody from MACOG, to meet in Pearson to help with their community worksheets. And then I believe it's the 20th at 6, I'm going from memory, in Mentone that we will be meeting. So MACOG will be here as well. So if, while we're talking through this and you get your Monday meeting done and you say, okay, could we have a sit down with myself and MACOG to work through the details, then that is available 100% to each of you, whatever we have to do to figure out how to make this most effective and easiest to move forward with. And I anticipate that we have been given the date of October 1st, and I have tried to move that multiple times. Don't worry, I have advocated millions of times, asking in multiple directions. She's a hard no on that one. But I feel that because of the fact that the plan is not going to really be released until January, I think she's going to be working on it from October, November, and December. So if we can get something,
A rough draft. by
a rough
October 1st.
draft that sounds good enough for government work so that we have the ability for the combined elected body to make it a good decision and to get it in the plan, then if we need to do tweaks, then we could do tweaks as we're working through the funding/granting side of things. So
This is just kind of a logistics type of question. Mike goes to the meeting on Monday. He gets a couple ideas. He says, oh, this is genius. Let's use this. Can he communicate with the rest of us during this time to say, hey, I have this option. I think it's a great idea.
So what
How does that-
what
how
we
does that
cannot
work?
do is conduct business in that fashion, because that would violate the open door law. So he could send out and say, this is what I've completed and given to them, but he can't say, what are all your thoughts on this? That would be conducting business outside
Right.
the open door law.
Yeah, so I think
So-
part of this decision is if Aggie and I are representing the board, we have approval based on the two of ours information to identify what goes into the worksheets and complete those worksheets.
I agree.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying too.
So then we would work with the two of y'all. Is that what I understand? So you're two representatives.
It seems that's that's where we've
Consensus?
ended up, yes.
And I won't be able to show up for that meeting then because there'll be 3 of us.
Oh, for
That's That's okay, I can sit out. I have.
for which
multiple-
meeting?
The Red Walk.
Well, I think that's, I don't know if all of us would go to the ride walk versus we would have to have a separate meeting to discuss which projects are going into the worksheet and filling out the worksheet. So,
So if all three of you appeared at the Ride Walk, as long as you weren't conducting park board business, I don't think that would potentially necessarily be a violation. I mean, obviously, people show up at the same
Yeah.
time together for various things. That is not by itself a violation.
I looked at my calendar. I have 3 events on that same time, so I think I'll just let you guys show up and I'll just sit it out. So,
well, we don't want to overstep your responsibilities for the ride walk committee. So I think it's a separate, us, if we both were to attend, I don't think doesn't sound like it violates any.
I don't think it does.
Meeting
Do you want
requirements.
to propose a motion then?
What motion, am I proposing that Aggie and I represent the Parks Board for the worksheet activity?
Yes.
Okay, I'll propose that then.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, we'll do what we can.
And if anybody would like more information, if anybody feels uncomfortable with help, my information is at the back and you're welcome to reach out to me and I can give you the full explanation. A lot of these individuals in the room have already heard it and I didn't want to, take another hour of your time. But I'm willing to sit down and answer any questions that you may have that you're uncomfortable with, so.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
And
it
then-
really does sound amazing. Don't take our little hesitancy there as anything other than, oh, that time frame's really tight.
Well, don't worry because this is the reaction everybody has to me. I've gotten used to it. I've also gotten used to, just living on the fly and trying to figure out how to make it work. So what I understand is this is not abnormal for Okra in the way that they expect things. And so you are not the first to give me the wide-eyed, how are we going to get this done? And I can say this, we have gotten it done. And
Well, it's a little different than having to wait another 2 years before we can submit another DNR grant if we miss a date. So it's good from that
Yeah.
end.
Well, it's neat because I think that having sat here and listened to all of the conversation, that's why I got so excited and came up here and didn't introduce myself, because I've been so excited to share this, because I am excited for what I think this can do to help guide the work that you guys have spoken about, and all the people that are in this room that really want to be a part of the process. I got very, very excited about this for you guys. and for
So I'll
what
just
we're
ask at the end of the meeting, Amy, Greg, Jody, Aggie, can we just get together quickly and identify when we can meet next week? Perfect, thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
And then we'll use your information on additional names that could help supplement that.
Any of our additional partners, you sure you don't want to chime in from Syracuse? We're happy you came down.
Could we get an introduction at least?
Yeah, Stanford, yourself, a little bit on the hook.
Right. There's a lot of overlap, but thank you. Thanks for attending.
Well, okay, then, our next item of business was to talk about the steering committee. And I thought, going back to Matt's, I would have loved to send out, let's put all these people in an email, and can't quite do exactly that, but I think we sort of need to get started. I was writing down just some concepts from really MACOG's list, so. And I don't know that if we identify people or organizations that we go to and say, what about these, what about this? So here's, just gonna lift off some of the organizations I came up with while we were sitting here. K-21, the Community Foundation, the Tourism Board, the Kosciuszko County Chamber, both hospitals. They had the County Health Department, but maybe we want Matt Sandy from the Planning Commission to be on to get the planning expertise.
Can you just clarify, this is the steering committee for the
Parks
MACOG
Board.
active part,
Yeah.
for the Parks Board overall?
Yes.
Okay.
Ride Walk. Obviously, we have three different, well, Warsaw couldn't appear today, but we've reached out to three different parks departments. We got KCV. I certainly think Jody ought to be involved in whatever we do. I know one of our other writers, Tom Wogeman, had reached out to me and wanted to be involved. I know we have one a very active writer who works for Lutheran, who might be interested in being involved. What are your guys' thoughts on how do we proceed? I don't want to go another month and then come back and say, let's get these people going. I think some of this has got to, we got to start cracking.
And the one thing that I'm concerned,
Yep.
You mean for the Parks Master Plan, the steering committee?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Okay.
yeah, so this is for
Yeah.
the master plan to work with MACOG.
Yes.
Okay. And then I think the other piece I just want to be careful of, I want to make sure we have representatives from the entire county. We know a lot of people, and a lot of us are from Warsaw and Winona Lake, but I think we need to make sure, and we have a lot of partners here. I'm interested in who's interested in being part of this steering committee, but I just want to make sure we have an outreach to the entire county on this and representation.
And I agree, and that's why, talking about Dan Nystrup, is just, who do we even need to consider to make sure we get everybody? Is there any other groups that are here tonight that do not want to be on it? I didn't think that would be a problem.
Three additional groups that come to mind is we have two organizations that focus on lakes and watersheds. And I think the Watershed Foundation and also the,
Yeah.
and the Lilly Center too. And then, the YMCA is all about recreation and health. I think it'd be interesting to get some perspective. They're also, at least in Warsaw, sitting on some pretty prime property along a blue way.
Have we had anybody express an interest up to this point?
Again, Tom Wogeman had expressed interest in me, and I think he expressed it to Mike as well. Other than that, I don't know that we've really put the word out at all.
I don't think there's awareness on it right now.
Right. Like some of the people Rich had from K-21 had interviewed to be on the group to begin with, so I'm certain there would be interest here. Amy sort of works with KEDCO, so that would include Alan Teal would be sort of wrapped up in that, so we'd have KEDCO.
How
So
quickly do we have to get this put together?
Danny, Don, excuse me, when do you need them?
As soon as possible, I mean,
Yeah, we're
as
supposed,
soon as possible, I can follow up with you, is next week too early or too late?
Well, no, neither one. I just think we as a board are gonna have to decide what we're gonna do and get started.
yeah, let me characterize it just a moment so we're supposed to have our first meeting in September, October for that steering committee. So I think that the sooner that we can get that group going, the better off we'll be. So,
That's the ideal, yeah. I would like to follow up with you guys to kind of set, when do we want to hold that first kickoff?
Should we email him suggestions, or is that going to overwhelm?
I think Greg had a comment.
Yeah, I was gonna mention in the Ride Walk, Warsaw Women Lake Master Plan, I think it's page 47, there is a list of 4 stakeholders that were invited to be part of that process. So it may be something just to look at that, and that was a list of everything from organizations to entities.
And I think Forward Kosciuszko Plan has a list similarly, that should also represent the county.
Donnie, just thinking out loud, help me out a little bit. If we were to reach out to all these organizations and say, we're gonna have a kickoff, and if you're interested, show up at the kickoff, could we then wean it down from then? Does that make any sense, since we're trying to sort of short circuit this so much?
I think it might be best if I hold a conference call with you guys.
Okay.
And then we can do that weeding down of who do we want to serve in the steering committee, and who do we want, stakeholders who should be involved but may not necessarily need to serve on the steering committee, that we could interview or do some form of engagement at some level. I think next week, Tuesday, if we can set up a call,
Okay.
I think that would be helpful.
So
Or I can come down.
we're back to sort of the same thing. It's either we need to authorize a couple of us to go run with this, or we need to set another official meeting here in 2 weeks.
I think in my opinion, between the lists that were identified, I'm comfortable if a subcommittee exists to reach out to those lists.
Reach out to
Yeah.
the list that we have.
I was just thinking a bit more about the list, and none of the organizations that focus on individuals with disabilities or diversity, I didn't hear any of those organizations.
Joe's Kids could be.
That'd be good. Cardinal Services, One Warsaw. I just want to make sure we're putting out a big enough umbrella.
Great idea.
Rob,
I think go ahead.
I liked what you were saying about maybe a committee to run with this so that we can kind of make tracks here, because I think it is important to, that we don't find ourselves in another holding pattern, another meeting for a meeting. So I would be comfortable helping participate in that group, a subcommittee, if you will, to field the steering committee.
Well, then I would propose that I create a subcommittee consisting of you and Matt to run with that.
Okay.
And then, but I think we should also have a motion then to approve them pre-selecting the steering committee so that we'll have authority for appointments then without coming back to the board. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yep.
What I will do then is I've written down, I will email everybody the names that we've talked about today. If I've forgotten one, just respond to it, and I'll let you guys run with it. But if somebody wants to make that motion.
I'll make the motion.
So the motion would be that the steering subcommittee look at the names, reach out to the organizations and see if they're willing to come to a initial meeting, working with Donnie on that. That's sort of my understanding of what we're agreeing to. Is that everybody else's agreement?
Donnie, where would we meet at? Or where, is it a virtual?
So let's let you guys deal with that then with Donnie, would be my suggestion.
Makes sense.
Just keep the rest of the committee in the loop on when that is. Certainly the kickoff, I would expect all of us to be there. And we'll have to talk to Michelle about whether we want that to be an official meeting at that point in time. But I think it's critically important that we all be there for that. But with that being the motion, is there a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. That was the last item of agenda.
We actually did have, you skipped over the DNR subcommittee.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did, and you guys have materials for us.
Yes. So there's only 5 minutes left, but, Aggie put this together, and I think just maybe a couple minutes on what these materials are, just for the reference for the board.
Right.
That'd be
Great.
good.
And I think that, is this something we can put up on the screen? No? Okay, that's fine. So those of us on the Parks and Recreation Board have a copy. Sorry that we don't have this to distribute it to those of you sitting with us. But Mike and I were the DNR subcommittee appointed at our last meeting, and we have had multiple meetings with representatives of IDNR. And what we were specifically doing is researching what does it take to get to an approved 5-year master plan, and also what are the key grants. So we've already talked during this meeting about the 2 DNR grants that are most specific to where we anticipate going, the Indiana Trails Program and the Land and Water Conservation Fund. In researching them, we heard about some other grant opportunities and also reviewed different master plans, some developed by MACOG, looking at some of the other funding sources that other parks organizations have gone after and or received. And the rest of this information is a list of just considering potential revenue sources as we consider going about our work. I can't say that we've thoroughly researched any of the rest of these, but we wanted to list them primarily just to keep in mind that it's not just those 2 DNR grant opportunities that we want to have our work revolve around. I also want to say that private funding is always a possibility, and we're able to accept that, whether it be a donation of land or in-kind or funds. So, because what we run into is there's always requirements and timelines and what can feel like loopholes with grants that may not make us feel that the grant really is allowing us to do what we really want to do. But I think there's always potential for private resources to help us. And I don't want us to feel that we're just being too grant funded in how we approach the work that we do over the next several years. So here's a resource. I don't think, Mike, unless you want to add more, I don't think we need to say more today, but we wanted to put it together.
No, you covered it. Thank you.
Well, with that addition, and my apologies for skipping over you guys, anything for good of the order, I will say that one item I added to the steering committee idea, and I don't know if there exists an actual DNR rep for the Tri-Lakes Fishing Game Area, but it might be interesting to reach out and see if there's a local DNR person who'd be interested in being on, so I'll add it to my list. Oh, yes?
That's a good idea, too.
And I have one more person, I just talked to Marcia. It would be someone that we could reach out to see. She just started a new position, so we don't want to tell her that she should do this. But for her extension, just got a new health and wellness educator. Her name is Shannon Shepard. So she recently started. So I can provide her contact information. You can, and one of the things that Marcia has tasked her to do is to provide activity for the county employees. And so it may be helpful for her as she's learning her new role. So I don't know that she can, but we can at least ask if she's willing.
I am on the County Wellness Committee, which meets for the first time for this season next week, so I'll see where that goes as well. Anything else for good of the order? This has been a long
and I think fruitful meeting. So thank you, and thank you to all of you for sticking with us for this whole thing. Our next scheduled meeting, unless we add one, is October 20th, back here at 1 o'clock. And other than that, I think we'll stand adjourned.
The recording has stopped.
Hey, Bill. Hey, how are you? Doing well. How about you? Good.